Hello students, today we'll see the next topic in the chapter differential thermal analysis and differential scanning calorimetry. In the previous lecture we have discussed about the introduction, then we have seen that the historical development with the DT and DSC, then we have seen the apparatus or we can say the instrumentation of the DTA and DSC. Today we'll see the next topic. From this, we learn about the heat flux DSC, the different types of the DSC. That is first heat flux DSC. Then we have to know about the power compensated DSC. Then next one is the how we have to calibrate the given DSC apparatus, DTA DSC apparatus, and what are the applications. So let us see one by one. So the first one is the heat flux DSC. So as we know that heat flux, it is the way by which we have to measure the thermocouples are positioned beneath the sample and the reference pan. The shift in the baseline is now only influenced by changes in the sample specific heat capacity and is not affected by other properties of the sample. So look at the figure 1 and 2. There is a difference in the baseline. So the difference temperature measured by the thermocouples whenever we have placed beneath and the test materials when the change in the specific heat capacity occurs. And in the figure 2, there is a difference in the temperature measured by the thermocouple beneath the pan and test material when change in the sample thermal conductivity or density will occur. So such a design of DSC may be used to measure the specific heat capacities. So unfortunately, the change in the baseline is also dependent on the characteristics of the pan holdings, the test materials, so that the apparatus has to be calibrated using known standard materials. The area under the peak is directly proportional to the heat of reaction. So delta H is equals to K into integration of delta T into dt, which is equals to K into area under the peak, that is the peak area. So the calibration constant K converts peak area into joules. So this is the most important conversion. That is, the particular peak area is directly converted into heat in the form of joules. Okay, and is the thermal factor which may vary with the temperature. So problems of measurement of the area still arising owing to the difficulty in defining the accurate baseline. We have seen in the previous two diagrams also there is a difference in the baseline which we have occurred, and due to that we cannot find out the actual peak area, or we can say the area under the peak. So however, the DSC designs does have some advantages. So not least the reduction in the chemical attack. Over earlier, the DTA designs where thermocouples were placed within the sample. Although the sensitivity is greater with the thermocouples within the sample, and baseline shifts are often greater, being produced not only by the changes in the specific heat capacity but also by changes in the thermal conductivity and density. In the DSC design, the positioning of the measuring thermocouples outside the test materials may reduce the sensitivity and overall response, and some small inversions may not be seen when using certain types of the DSC design. So this is about the heat flux DSC. Then next one is the power compensated DSC. In this other type of DSC, the sample and reference holders are insulated from each other and have their own individual sensors and heaters. So in the heat flux, there is a one and single heating coil is there, or we can say the heater is there. But in case of power compensated DSC, they are insulated from each other. Means what, sample and reference holders, they are insulated from each other, and hence there are individual sensors and heaters are there. So the electrical circuit operates to maintain the holders at the same temperature within the electrical sensitivity of the circuit by varying the power supply to the heater in each of the holders. So the thermal energy absorbed by the sample per unit time is exactly compensated by the differential electrical power delta P supplied to the heater. So this is the basic behind the power compensated DSC. So the measuring the power is equivalent to measuring the thermal power. Okay, and thus the baseline is written as delta P is equals to D into delta Q upon dt, and which is exactly equals to beta into Cs minus Cr, and the peak area gives the delta H directly. So in power compensated DSC, the calibration constant required to convert the peak area to joule and to joules is a constant electrical conversion factor. Then what is the effect of higher temperature of with respect to the power compensated DSC? So generally, most DSC designs develop for their measurement of specific heat capacity, and delta H are most suitable for the temperature up to around 700 degrees Celsius. Above this temperature or radiation, which is always present but increases with temperature and becomes significant. So most theories of DTA are based on the heat transfer by conduction and assume that radiation is insignificant and so are only relevant at lower temperatures. So high temperature cells tends to follow the DSC design to avoid thermocouple contamination at temperatures up to 1500 degree Celsius. And however, at high temperature, heat transfer from the source of the heat to the sample is rapid, and if the measuring thermocouple are located beneath the pans, the sensitivity may be relatively low. So that is why there is a much effect of higher temperature whenever we have considering the DSC designs. Then what about the sample size? When a sample is undergoing a reaction, there is a necessity, a temperature gradient within it. So as it is abstracted, assuming that it is absorbed, means what this is the endothermic change. So to obtain meaningful colorimetric data, it is important that the sample size should be kept minimum in order to reduce such gradients. Okay, so that the sample size should be minimum. However, if the sample consists of number of materials, as in study of reaction processes, then it is usually difficult to obtain small representative sample. So in such a situation, the ideal solution is to use a large sample with the thermocouple embedded in it. Okay, and to recognize that apparatus is only qualitative uh, when used in this manner. Now next most important factor is calibration. Why there is a need to calibrate the given apparatus, or why we can calibrate any kind of apparatus. So in order to get the accurate results, we have to calibrate that. Okay. So for accurate work, it is essential to calibrate the temperature scale, and for DSC instrument, the apparatus also be calibrated for the colorimetric sensitivity. So generally, if you consider DTA, at that time you should have to calibrate the temperature scale, and for the DSC, we have to calibrate the colorimetric sensitivity. What is the colorimetric sensitivity? We have to calibrate that one, and in this way, we can have to get an accurate result. So the particular instrument may have calibration factors already included in the computer software, but these must be checked from time to time. So for pure metal, such as the 99.99% pure indium, the melting of which is shown in the figure 3, the extrapolated onset temperature is TE. Okay, so TE means extrapolated temperature should be corresponding to the correct melting point of the metal, that is a 156.6. So look at this figure. So this is the figure in which we have to get a DSC peak for the pure indium metal, showing the construction of the extrapolation onset for the 6 mg of the sample at 10 Kelvin per minute of temperature rate and in under nitrogen atmosphere. So here we have to get a 156.6 as the exact melting point if you consider the particular heating, or we can say the DSC. So the integrated area of peak as may be then used to calculate the colorimetric sensitivity K. So by using this integrated area under the peak, okay, so we have to find out the colorimetric sensitivity by such a calculation. So by such calorimetric sensitivity constant K, which is given as K is equals to delta Hs into Ms divided by As. So where delta Hs is the enthalpy of the fusion of indium, that is about 28.71 joule per gram. Then Ms is the mass of the sample, that is indium, and As is the peak area in centimeter square, and K is the colorimetric sensitivity constant. So in this way, by using this temperature or by using this heating experiment, we have to find out or we have to calibrate the temperature, as well as we have to calculate the colorimetric sensitivity constant K. So the calibration with several materials over the entire range of operations should enable the temperature dependence of K to be found. Then this is the particular calibration. Then what are the applications? So there are such large number of variety of applications of DT and DSC that readers should consult the journals or specialist text for the particular example. So the selection given below representative of range of use of the techniques. So the applications may be divided roughly into two categories. First one is the physical changes and measurements, such as the melting, crystalline phase changes, changes in the liquid and liquid crystalline states, and in polymers, phase diagrams, heat capacity, in glass transition temperature, then thermal conductivity and diffusivity and emissivity. So these are the physical changes we have to find out, and by this method we have to analyze the sample. So the chemical reactions such as the dehydration, decomposition, polymer curing, glass formation, oxidative attack. So these are the some chemical reactions are studied by using DT and DS. So first one is the physical changes and its measurements. So first one is the melting point and enthalpy, change in enthalpy of the fusion of material. So the determination of melting point may be very easily done with a simple apparatus, but delta H of fusion is much more difficult to measure. So while DTA will give excellent qualitative measurements of TM, we must use DSC for the delta H. So sharp melting point similar to the figure 3 have been obtained with the suitable apparatus over a wide range of temperature. For example, from N-heptane at minus 90 degrees Celsius to palladium at 1550 degrees Celsius temperature. So this is the most important advantage of using this kind of technique, in which we have to find out the melting point of various range, a wide range of compounds ranging from the minus 90 to 1550 degree Celsius. So the melting points and the delta H of fusion of these compounds determined by DSC or DTA as the onset temperature are in good agreement with the literature results. So the crystallization of pure materials can be awaited since they are often supercooled past their true freezing point by many degrees. Then next one is the crystalline phase transition. What is mean by crystalline phase transition? So generally, the crystalline form of a compound can greatly affect its property, such as the solubility, density, and electrical properties. So if the substance possesses two or more crystalline forms, it is said to be polymorphic. Means what? If you consider the, for example, carbon is in exist in the various kinds of form, in the form of graphite, then we have a diamond, and then we have a fullerene. So just like that, if the substance possesses two or more crystalline forms in the form of crystals, we can call it as a polymorphic. So if the forms are stable over a particular temperature ranges and have a definite transition temperature, then the system it is called as a anisotropic. And if one form is stable but the other metastable over a whole range of temperature, then the system is monotropic, and the less stable form will always be tending to transform towards the more stable form. Then next one is the, we have to see the crystalline phase transition for the potassium nitrate. Okay, So the potassium nitrate shows rather complex behavior whenever we have heated and cooled. So look at what are the different behavior as is shown by the particular potassium nitrate. So on first heating, there is an endothermic crystal transition from form 1 to form 2 to form 1 is going to take place at 128 degrees Celsius with a enthalpy change of about 5 kilojoule per mole. So look at this particular heating starting from or from form second to form 1 is going to take place at 128 degrees Celsius with a energy of about 5 kilojoule. This is the 5 kilojoule energy uh, is taken up by that particular phase, and melting of form 1 at 334 degrees Celsius with delta H is uh, 10 kilojoule per mole. So look at this is the particular 330 the melting of this particular compound at 334 degrees Celsius, and there is a energy, it is about 10 kilojoule. This much amount of energy, or we can say the heat, is absorbed. So however, if the sample is then cooled from about 150 degrees Celsius, we get an exothermic peak at 120 degrees Celsius, and with delta H of only minus 2.5 kilojoule per mole. So look at the exothermic condition. So if you consider the exothermic condition at that time, there is a exothermic transition is going to be takes place, and at 120 degrees Celsius, the it emits some amount of energy, or it ejects some amount of energy, and hence we can say that there is a very less amount of transformation of energy is going to be takes place, and it is a minus 2.5 kilojoule, because the energy is released, and that's why the symbol or sign is minus. Okay, so this is the one of the aspects. So there is a phase transition is going to be takes place at that point. Okay, and hence we can say that this must mean that it is forming a different phase, that is a form 3. So at lower temperature it transforms slowly back to form second, and these transitions are shown in the figure. So other nitrates also show the crystal phase transitions, especially rubidium nitrate, which has a 3 transitions plus melting, and ammonium nitrate, which has a 4 before melting. But what happened with the ammonium nitrate? So ammonium nitrate is explosive in nature. That's why we have not performed that experiment very well. So we can here have to consider here the example of potassium nitrate. Okay. So this is all about our lecture. In the next lecture, we will see some applications of DTA and DSC. Okay, we will meet on the next lecture. Thank you.